Hey, welcome to Sanity at the Movies, The Bookening, Sound of Sanity, all the podcasts we've ever done. Yeah, I'm releasing this on all of our feeds because this is the one big update on what we are doing, which we need to update you on because we have not done much of anything of late. And so, guys, I'm Nathan. That is Ben. That is Jake.
Hello.
Hey.
Ben says, ashamed to be here.
No, I'm happy to be here.
Joined today by BJ. Trying to mask his voice.
Well, the reality is Ben usually plays this Ben Sulzer character, this kind of concoction that he's created for the masses. But today he is just being himself.
His normal
normal
day-to-day voice. Yeah.
Listen, guys, what are we doing with the podcast? So this is going out again to the Bookening, the Sound of Sanity, and to the Sanity at the Movies feeds, all of which still exist in some form on the internet, all of which still have Patreons that still take money, and we need to update everybody where we're at.
Well, over the last several months, what we've done is just decide we need to focus on our mission as a church. And so all those shows have just been set to the side, and we have been pretty intent, at least in our conversations, about killing those shows. Just like, hey, everything needs to be reoriented around the mission of Church of the King. And I don't see how this fits.
I wouldn't be telling tales out of school to say, we reached out to Brandon to say, hey, you want to come down and do a final hurrah for the Bookening, and the scheduling didn't work out. But that's the thing that happened. So that's how serious we were.
And have been. But we also just wanted, before we announced it or anything like that, we wanted to give it time, get through the semester. You know, part of what we did was is something funny?
No.
Okay, all right.
Why would anything be funny, Jake? We're recording together. This is a serious moment.
As all recordings have always been.
It was Ben like over there chortling?
He was. He's just over there laughing.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jake.
But okay, so a big part of that was we started this thing called the Round Table, and it was like, all right, let's focus. If we took that time and energy and focused it in discipleship for our church, what would that look like? And we took really a lot of the best of what we had built or developed, or maybe just the creative chemistry that we have discovered with each other over the years that you guys as listeners have helped us develop. And we channeled that into a monthly thing called the Round Table, where we're teaching our whole church family theology, but in a fun and creative and hopefully funny and entertaining sort of way. And if you have been in the Sound of Sanity feed, you would see that that's actually, we've just changed the name of that feed because it fits. It is, I think, the true era of Sound of Sanity.
Mm-hmm. And we've moved the archives to an archive podcast called Sound of Sanity Archive. So if you're looking for an old episode, they exist. They're out there. They're on all the major platforms.
They're all still there. And so let's just get through this semester. Let's figure this out. Let's figure out the Round Table. Let's put our energy and effort there for the sake of our church. Maybe we can still put that out there and it'll still be beneficial to people, even though it's a live show. And so it's a much more visual and visually oriented show. So a lot of things don't maybe necessarily come through on a strictly audio format, but let's put it out there anyway if we can, unless there are things that just don't quite work. And then revisit things. And so when it comes to these shows, we look at them and think, okay, there are different aspects to what it means to be doing the mission of our church. And one of those aspects is just our own commitment to talk, to work things out, to grow, to push each other, to read, to watch movies, to be engaging with the culture, to be having those conversations, to be growing in our ability to talk about those sorts of things with people on a day-to-day basis. So that's part of the mission, right?
Right.
But, how much time and effort does it take to put those kinds of shows together? It's just sort of been an open question. And
for anybody who doesn't know, by the way, some helpful context is I work for the church now, which wasn't always true in these podcasts, and I have for a while now.
Yeah, helpful context, if you want real helpful context. These shows were all part of a multimedia ministry born out of Trinity Church in Bloomington, Indiana, called Warhorn Media. At the first of the year, we left. We resigned. We left Warhorn Media. The shows came with us. And are now ministries of Church of the King. And that's part of why we're sort of like...
What does it look like for the Bookening to be a ministry of Church of the King?
Right, as opposed to a ministry of Warhorn, which is a ministry of Trinity and Bloomington, which is where we started and where we came from, but a church that we're no longer a part of. What does it look like for all these things to be a ministry of Church of the King? And if that's our focus, do they need to change? Do they need to morph? Or do they need to die and take a back seat to what the church actually needs? And so that's sort of like it's been in limbo because of that. And so the church hired Nathan. It took on more of my salary and more of Ben's salary. Mm-hmm. It just took on, and by God's grace, the church has grown in its ability over the last, we moved down here 4 years ago.
That's right.
And our churches have been having services for about 3 years. And the church has grown and God's blessed it and is in a position to be able to pay all three of us. Even though Nathan and Ben still have to have part-time other work, it's been able to fill the void that would have been Warhorn and allow us to be much more focused on our work in ministry here in Evansville. And so then what does that mean? What does that look like? And how important is it for us to have any kind of ministry outside of our church too? But we would have said, even when we started Warhorn back in the day, that our goal was to produce things that disciple the people of our church, but put them out there in such a way that hopefully they would be helpful to the broader church as well. But that's, it's very different when you are in a church plant context as opposed to a church that has a 30-year history and has a senior pastor like Tim Bailey, and you're just your support staff. And now we're the lead staff in a relatively new church. Things just have to look different.
Which means, for example, Jake is preaching pretty much every week, and if he's not, one of us is. And so
which was not the case at all.
Which was never the case in Bloomington.
I was preaching, when we started Warhorn, I was a college pastor, and I was preaching on a weekly basis, but we weren't podcasting. And then as I moved into more of a broader discipleship role in the church, and we started developing Warhorn, I stepped away from college ministry, and that meant I stepped away from weekly teaching, and then the podcasting became my outlet for that sort of thing. Ben was training for ministry, and Nathan was just a member in the church looking to serve. And so that was it. That was just what we did. But yeah, now we're preaching and teaching on a regular, consistent basis, all three of us, and have a lot more responsibility outside of the podcasting and the multimedia stuff. And so how does it all fit? How does it work? How does it serve our church? How does it serve our people?
And how does it serve us? Because like you said, we want to be growing. We want to be engaging with the culture. There's got to be a better way to say that. But, we want to be thinking about, man, no way to pull out of this voice.
Yes, that is a phrase that I said.
Did you say it?
I did say it. Yeah.
Well, I said it too, but as I did it, I was like, no, you can't say that. That sounds pretentious and lame, dude. But we do. I mean, whatever the good way of saying engage with the culture is, we want to be doing that thing. We don't want to be the Gospel Coalition, but we want to know what's going on. It turns out we like art. We like movies. We like books. We think they're cool. We read them. We watch them.
Well, and it's like, yeah, just because we've not recorded an episode of the Bookening for a while doesn't mean that we've not been reading. Like I've read Murakami and Ishiguro and Cormac McCarthy, and I'm reading a Stephen King. And since we recorded our last podcast episode, we still do all that stuff.
Right. So how's it all fit? Where's it all fit? How can Ben still have time to devote 4 hours a day to hang gliding ministry.
The church pays for it all, Nathan.
Well, yeah, I know. So we want to make sure we are getting value from that. which means you need to be able to focus on your hang gliding.
Right, man.
So that Ben does not spend 4 hours a day hang gliding.
3.5.
3.5.
Most.
3.5 to 7. Listen, so the thing is, what's it going to look like? And you've been waiting for us to give the answer. And here is where we're at. And we're just going to be very honest about exactly where we're at. So where are we at? So be honest for us, Jake.
We're going to do what we want when we want.
Mhm.
And we're going to do it in the feed currently called the Round Table. Because that's the original Sound of Sanity feed. And what it's basically going to be is just roundtable discussions with the three of us about whatever it is we feel like talking about. And so...
And we might be at a rectangular table. We might be at a square table. There might not even be a table in the room.
You'll never know.
We don't
We're
care.
Gonna call it the round
We're
table.
going to call it the round table because
So imagine what you will.
Yeah.
Probably what will happen is Nathan and I will be sitting in chairs and Ben will be doing ridiculous things.
Like on a bed of nails or something like that.
Standing on his head,
Mhm.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to imagine. But we're just going to talk about what we want to talk about when we want to talk about it. And that's really it. That's all we're promising. And so I read some books or we've watched a movie or Nathan's seen a thing or Ben's been boning up on some aspect of, we just did our round table event on the Trinity. And so Ben's reading Augustine on the Trinity and wants to talk a little bit more about that. Whatever it is, that's what we're going to talk about. And it's not going to be, hey, we're all reading Proust this month or Murakami this month or whatever, or we're all watching, the latest movie or this particular classic.
Mm-hmm.
No, I can guarantee I will still be watching movies because I certainly have since we stopped watching recording Sanity at the Movies.
And sometimes what will happen is one of us will see a movie and we'll get to talking about it and the rest of us will see it. And then we'll have a whole conversation about the one movie that we all saw.
I imagine a couple times a year, or maybe actually not very often because they just aren't making a lot of movies right now. But there was a strike and there was this thing called COVID and nothing's coming out. And what is coming out sucks and theaters are dead and all that stuff. But I imagine once Hollywood begins to have some more product, there will be 1 or 2 things a year that we do actually all want to go see and come and sit down and talk about and do something like what you're used to. And maybe there'll be some books like that as well. I'm not promising anything.
Yeah, no promises. That's the point. Points, no promises. And it's like, well, what happened a couple months ago? I picked up The Buried Giant by Ishiguro, and we had a conversation about Ishiguro, and Ben was like, I've never tried him. I think I'm going to try Remains of the Day. And so have you actually read it?
In the process, over halfway through, listening to it.
Okay. So it may be that, like, I've read The Buried Giant, so Ben's read The Remains of the Day, and Nathan's read enough Ishiguro that we're able to just have a pretty good conversation about Ishiguro in general, or something like that too.
Yeah, I mean, what I actually hope, and I can't promise this even, but what I hope is you will actually get more of what you want this way than you were. Better for us to be happy and following the things that interest us. You'll probably get more book content and more quality book content, more movie content, more of whatever it is you liked from Sound of Sanity. You won't get the skits. You have to come to the round table for that. Although you will actually get a recording of them that will sometimes make sense. And we are working on the Chip and Lance show.
That's the thing that I think.
The animated Chip and Lance show.
You had to tell him. But it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. That's our deep, dark secret that we have been hiding.
We have never stopped being creative.
Our deep, dark secret that we have been hiding.
I did.
Well, except for Ben.
This whole time.
It's like, I've gone into accounting, chaps. Numbers are the thing.
We have been in the process of working with an art studio on an animated Chip and Lance show.
And it's cool.
And it's still early stages, and we can't promise a lot.
Mm-hmm.
In the first season, if we're able to make this work the way we hope we can, we'll have to get some funding for it. And the first season will just be the first season that we've already done, because we need to,
like the School of the Fates thing, if you remember that.
That School of the Fates season, because we've already got that. And it's such a learning curve to be working with animation. We can't be doing something totally new at the same time. But we have enough of content that we love and that we think is really great there, that we think that we can turn that into an animated season if everything comes together and we get the funding that we need for it, which we'll let you know. If you're interested in being a part of that, we'll let you know. You'll hear about it. But first things first, and we're just working on a 3-minute little promotional thing that's also a proof of concept.
Right, something we can take to investors, basically.
Yeah. And so we've been working on, our first conversation with the art studio about that was like 10 months ago, 8 months ago, 9 months ago.
Yeah, it's not like you just call Animation Incorporated and say, "Hey, we've got some audio. You have to design you have to build the infrastructure, you have to build the relationships."
Yeah, you have to have the right studio, the right people, the right relationships, and you have to then build the trust, and then you have to. So much goes into character design and everything like that. So a lot of work goes into the first 3 minutes. And a lot of the work that goes into the first 3 minutes will then pay off downstream because, now you've got a design for Chip and you've got a design for Lance, you've got a design for Pink Eye at the very least. And then in this case, Sparky and, some of the town and some places, some things like that are also going to be coming together. But still, it's just a lot of work. And even that, it's like, well, we've been doing Chip and Lance type things in the Ville since 2013 or 2014 or something like that.
Whatever it is, yeah.
It's at least 10 years, 10 to 12 years we've been doing this stuff. And we've done it all audio. And we've almost never talked about what the visual aspect, like what things actually look like in our heads, what they look like visually, because we've been so focused on making it work in an audio format. It's just a different, it turns out that Nathan's idea of Chip and Ben's idea of Chip are not the same idea of Chip, right? And
Correct.
I have my own idea of Chip. And it's like, well, we've been playing and working with this character for 12 years and we each have a different Chip that we visualized in our minds. And it's like, well, we have to find a way to bring that together and not just our own idea of what Chip looks like, but you really want to empower your visual artists to hear what they hear and see what they see and be creative and then work with their direction because you want them to be happy and artistically satisfied too.
Or alternately, build a microchip you can put into their brain such that you can control their every movement and use their talent entirely to satisfy your idea of what it should be.
Ben has in development, and once we patent that and sell it to Elon Musk, then we'll be able to produce whatever we want.
Right, but until that
Pretty
time,
great.
was that?
Pretty great.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yep. I mean, you're going to think it is.
Right, yes.
I mean, honestly, I'm looking at literal fan art of Chip and Lance in the badge. There's a badge lord there.
And it's awesome.
Even that factors into my thinking of what does Chip look like? Well, I think he looks a little bit like this kid thinks he looks like, so, and we've got a lot of that sort of thing just laying around here that we've all been looking at and thinking about. So
yeah, not much else we can say about that right now, but that is a thing. And I guess we brought that up because that's a creative thing we're working on in the background. We haven't given up on any of that stuff, but in terms of what you'll be actually getting podcast wise, it's going to be us and the Roundtable feed talking about what we want. And I hope that will actually be something that we enjoy and that you enjoy and that gets you more of what you actually want.
Yeah, so it'll be us talking about the things we're excited about, that we're reading, that we're watching, that we're just happy to be talking about in a way that doesn't put too much pressure on us to pull away our time, effort, and energy from the church, from the Roundtable, or from Chip and Lance.
I mean, it is the biggest boohoo white guy problem in the world, the biggest first world problem, but we have had seasons of reviewing movies and reviewing books for our job and for one of our primary ways of making money. And there have been times where that's been a little disheartening because it's like, yay, I get to sit down and watch a movie with my wife. Oh, I guess we're watching.
I guess we have to watch this movie that we decided on together.
Yeah, hope you like Night of the Hunter, honey. Whatever it is. And it's not that I didn't enjoy doing those podcasts. It's not that I didn't largely pick the things and we didn't pick the thing. Obviously it was fun and we reviewed the things that we wanted to but there is just something about like, oh, I'm doing this for a job. And it's been really nice to take a few months off and to like watch a movie that's not for the podcast. And I'm not like doing anything. Like the only reason I'm watching it is just to enjoy it with my wife or something like that. Like I actually hadn't done that for a while. I actually hadn't read a book that didn't have some reason. And it's really fun to do that. And it's,
yeah. And I don't know. Again, it's a sort of a boohoo white boy problem.
But we're white boys.
It's what we are.
And we cry. We say boo-hoo. If we die, we just say boo.
Big girls may not cry, but white boys do.
Right.
So,
and it's white boy summer, I'm told. I think. Is that still a thing?
I think people are trying to make it still a thing.
Oh, so. People get new things.
People are the worst.
People are the worst. Don't like people. Do like movies again. Yay. I'm back to being a teenager.
Well, even some of it comes down to like pace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like part of the difficulty was like I had a hard time getting through Proust. And some of that was just like, well, I wanted to read Proust at my own pace, which is actually pretty slow.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's, I think, how Proust, it's just how I want to approach Proust, and I think how Proust wants to be approached. And so we're going to try to do Proust in a month, and it's like, well, I don't want to do that. I just don't want to do that. And it's painful, it's hard, you're resistant to it. And you can say, well, it's a job, so you just do the job. But actually, when it's art, part of evaluating art is taking art on its own terms.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it wants to be read slow, you need to read it slow. And when you don't have the freedom to take it on its own terms as it hits you in the context of your life, then your opinion and your perspective on it's going to be skewed. So we take away the pressure, and then I bang out 3 books in like 4 weeks. But they're what I want because it's what I'm feeling.
I think the other thing about that is we are all going into 40. Jake just turned 40 this year. I don't think I'd be lying if I was to say that.
It's the truth.
Or telling a tale out of school. I'm going on 40. Ben's like 9,000 years old, dude.
He's 49.
Ben's 49. Ben's
49.
not 49. Ben's in his early 40s. 41, if I'm not mistaken.
41.
Yeah, there we go.
Miami.
So we had our youth where we liked the things we liked. And then we had like our post-youth where we reacted against the things that we liked. And then we had like our period of maturity where we matured into just being regular adult people. And then we had our reaction against that. We've done that cycle a few times now. And where I'm at on the cycle is a place that I'm very happy to be, which is where I don't feel the need to react to anything. I can just it's good to enjoy movies and books. I don't want to be the Gospel Coalition and try and sanctify or baptize them in some way that I think is stupid. But also I want to see that they are valuable and nourishing, and that art is a nourishing part of a complete diet of being human. And it's a gift that God's given us, and it's something that I can enjoy and can benefit from. And I like being there. I feel like my relationship with all this stuff that we talk about is better than it has been for a long time, and happier than it has been for a long time. So I'm excited to be able to talk about it with people again and do some podcasts, but just be chill and not have any major agenda. We're not changing the world. We're not making the definitive exploration of anything. We're just talking about some stuff we enjoy, or some stuff that we hate, or some, just whatever hits our fancy to talk about. Like Jake said, if Ben's found a little corner of theology that he wants to talk about, or we'll talk about that. I suppose if we have political thoughts, although I doubt you're going to find much of that because that's not what we fancy at this time. But it's just nice to, I mean, if it's not too over the top to say, it's nice to feel the freedom in Christ to just enjoy some stuff and benefit from it where we can and not idolize it on the one hand or denigrate it in order to avoid idolizing it.
Yep.
Which is this dance that I think you do, especially as a younger person who maybe feels more hunger in a bad way for some of that stuff. You're like, I'm really hungry and I'll just give in, or I'm really hungry and I'll abstain and be sanctimonious about it. But, you know, I feel a little bit of distance and maturity and therefore happiness with all this stuff. I don't have to say Cormac McCarthy is the greatest author of all time. I also don't have to pretend like Cormac McCarthy holds no value. It's like maybe I can kind of be in a mature middle somewhere and see what's great and what's existential and depraved about the man and just move on with my life. So the Roundtable feed is where you'll find us. We are going to go ahead and just leave the Patreon, all three of them open. So the Sound of Sanity Patreon, the Bookening Patreon, Sanity at the Movies Patreon. Now, what is the thinking behind that?
For one, we're going to keep those archives up.
Right.
And so
that has a little cost associated.
That has some financial cost associated with it. It's not much, but it's also just, if you have appreciated our work in the past, if you want us to keep doing even this sort of thing, and it's a place where you can still contribute, and all that money goes to our church. It doesn't go to our pockets directly. Some of it makes its way there eventually, but it just goes to our church now, our church plant. And so you're supporting the ministry of Church of the King by supporting any one of those podcasts and making sure Church of the King feels good about continuing to pay to host those sorts of things. And
maybe this is a dangerous conversation to have on mic because we never actually finished talking about this in our planning, but let's try. I would say I'd still like to send a book to that reward level of the Bookening.
I don't have a problem with that. I just think, the question is going to be what book and how do we pick it and how does that work? And
I think the way it'll work, because my wife is the one that handles fulfillment, is I'll be like, hey guys, have any idea? And then I'll make a random final choice, and then my wife will order it and fulfill it for us, and you'll get a book. And maybe Ben's reading about the Trinity, so you'll get
I guess
this is unlikely.
This is unlikely.
Just say,
it'll be a fiction book.
It'll be 12 months of Diana Wynne Jones. Who are we kidding? That's all that you're going to get from now on.
12 months of Diana Wynne Jones.
Well, I definitely, of the books that I've read over the last couple months, I can give an unqualified recommendation to The Buried Giant. It's at least worth hitting your head against for most people, I think.
Oh, how about that? How about
one.
that'll be the next book?
I don't see why not. I think that would be a great one to send out.
Yeah.
Cool.
We'll send it out. Maybe we'll give you some little signatures like in the past. I'd like to keep that going. I will certainly understand if you don't want to support any one of these Patreons. We're not going to be doing these are things that have already happened, but I just want to be upfront about as many things as we possibly can. We're not going to be much to be keeping those Discords alive. Again, I don't think I'm going to kill them, but
there's still a place where people like to talk and hang out every once in a while and throw things out there. And
I still have the app on my phone. If I see a notification, I'll check it. And, I've been a little embarrassed to check it recently because we just have been working on other things. And, I don't want to have these things going without communicating with you guys about where your money's going and what we're doing. But if we can be upfront and free, which makes Ben chuckle.
Bottom line, don't be surprised when you read about our Church of the King blimp, which you're funding, basically.
Right. Yeah.
It's
right.
It's awesome. It's a totally legitimate use of your money.
along with Ben's, what was it, skydiving?
Along with Ben skydiving.
Hang gliding.
Hey,
Hang gliding.
What better place in southern Indiana to hang glide from than a blimp?
It's way easier to launch off of than my roof, let me tell you.
Now,
Which has presented a lot of problems
fun
lately.
fact, when I moved to Church of the King, you might have said I was the Church of the King blimp because I was like 300 pounds. But I've lost a lot of weight since then.
It's true.
Looking pretty good, if I do say so.
It's true. It's true.
Yep.
Nathan's lost a lot of weight, and he looks great.
Well, here's the thing. I got
It's
married to a lady. She's a little younger than I am. We had kids. They're way younger than I am. About as younger than I am as one can be. We're having another kid, and when that kid comes, he or she will be as young in relation to me as anyone possibly can be who's not in the womb at the moment that he comes out, or she. Haven't found out yet. But what was the point of all that? I have no idea. Oh,
You lost weight.
yeah. It's like, oh no, I have to be able to like pick up these kids and go for walks and stuff. Instead, I'm in the Church of the King blimp. I can kind of float slowly behind them with like a Goodyear advertisement on the side or something. And that's no good. They can mount me and fly to places and drop pamphlets and it's cool. but
Be better if you could move on your own and if you survived.
right, being able to walk is a good thing. I wasn't in a wheelchair or anything like that. Yes, all that great digression because the word blimp. So, guys, is that all the news?
I think, hey, we're having a baby too.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That is fun.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Sulcers want to.
Sulcer's been trying.
Sulcers trying to catch up.
All right, well, folks, pray for our babies that they would be safe and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought maybe I would never have a kid that would be older or the same age as one of Jake's kids because he started like 16 years before I did or something like that.
Yeah, my youngest is turning 8 this year. So I've got 7 kids, ages 16 to 7, almost 8.
Pretty good.
You'll be a grandpa before you know it.
Oh man. Yeah, I guess it's not out of the realm of possibility. I'll be a grandpa in my 40s.
Yeah. I mean, 2 years. Your son will be 18. Legally speaking, you could be a grandpa very soon. And then it's just the long moldering in the grave.
Yeah, that's right.
Your regular hand becomes a skeleton hand.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that lately.
What would be awesome
Mhm.
is if Jake could get to great grandpa status.
I think he's got a shot.
He
By
does.
60.
Dude, that would be awesome.
I think there's a
That's
legitimate.
pushing it.
By 60 is pushing
By
it.
60 is pushing it, but by 65 is actually not.
There's a good chance that you'll see great grandpa. There's a good chance your wife will see great
and
or
then if he
great
lives
great.
to be 90,
Mhm.
he could.
Oh
That's
my
not what a
goodness.
crazy thought.
Oh my goodness.
What a crazy thought. He'd be the crusty patriarch.
The crusty patriarch.
If I live to 90, that's another 50 years, and I have a 16-year-old son, so he'll be 66.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
And then, yeah.
Stranger things have happened. Order 66 decimated the Jedi.
It sure did.
I mean, let's not
Anakin killed those younglings.
forget about that when it comes to the number 66.
suddenly the conversation took a duck.
See, when we don't podcast, I don't get to free associate, which is one of
We're
my
talking about children, and now we're talking about murdering children.
No, you should never murder younglings. I hate that Anakin did that. I hate that for him. I really don't think he should have done it.
I hate it for the dead children, personally, but
I hate it for the franchise because it's not fun.
it was a really stupid, bad choice.
And I hope this murderer of kids comes back and reconciles with his son. It's just one of those things where,
How do you come back from it?
yeah,
On any, you have to, because
You just have to ignore it.
you've already emotionally invested in the father-son relationship. You're then forced to whitewash the fact that this dude is just massacred and slaughtered children.
yeah. He had to save Padme. Come back to hear us relitigate the original.
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, I bet we'll still talk about George Lucas and we'll still say he's a genius. And then,
Yes.
and then we'll talk about the dumb things that he did that sucked. Which, two things can be true at once, as Ben Shapiro likes to say. The greatest of all podcasters. Man, I haven't got to free associate. I haven't got to throw snide shade at random things that I don't like that much that other people like. Podcasting is great. So what have you guys been reading and watching? And, let's give people a little taste. Let's let them wet their beaks. The kind of stuff that they'll get in this podcast.
As soon as we got done with Proust and we're like, the bookening is dead,
Mhm.
we're done. We're burning this to the ground. I think that's how the conversation went.
It's dead. It's done. We're burning this to the ground. Yeah.
I went to Barnes & Noble and I got like 8 books.
Nice.
I really wanted to try Murakami because I've heard so many things about him, positive, negative, but all interesting. And so I bought Wild Sheep Chase, and I read that, and
Boo.
yeah, it was not a good book. It was not a good book. That I finished that, and I read Buried Giant by Ishiguro, and that was really great. It was a lot of fun. It was nice to be in the hands of somebody who knows how to write prose, and it was an Arthurian sort of story. And I don't know how much to say about it because it was just fun. What Ishiguro does is he picks a genre and is like, I'm going to now write my novel in this genre that I may not even understand that much about. And this is his fantasy novel.
Does he understand more or less than Mr. Guy Ritchie about King Arthur?
Excuse me.
I think that you can't
compare two of the greatest artists working.
That's right. No, he definitely understands more about Arthur. He gives you all the Arthur vibes. Now, what he does with Arthur in the end is more or less desecrate Arthur. But you can't do that properly without properly understanding Arthur. And so I think on some ways it's like more subversive than Guy Ritchie.
But he had to actually respect the real thing.
But you have to actually respect and understand the real thing in order to be that subversive, in order to properly desecrate it, which means there's a degree to which you respect it a lot more.
Right.
And so, I mean, should I spoil? Probably not, since we're going to send it out to people.
Yeah, maybe in a later episode you'll spoil, but
we'll just let people.
Yeah, we'll just leave it there for now.
Let me just sort of like set the scene for you. You start out, and there is a mysterious. This is a land of ogres and fairies and pixies and dark things in the forest that will come and get you in the night. And you're with this old couple that live in the side of a hill and are part of a community. And there's this mysterious mist that rises out of the ground, and nobody can quite understand why they don't remember so many things. And even if somebody disappears, that somebody's quickly forgotten. Like the whole disappearance and everything will be forgotten. And this couple basically has something of an awakening, enough of an awakening to say, I think we had a son, and I think he can help us. We have to go find our son. And they start on a quest, on an adventure to find their son. And even because Ishiguro is such a master of prose, everything about how he sets this scene, it just is very evocative of memory, of the forgotten past, of things that are just beyond the reach of what it's sort of like Proust, right? Like that, the famous, Proustian moment where it's like, this reminds me of something, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is.
Gene Wolfe as well.
I'm just reaching and reaching for this. And so you have this elderly couple, and they have a past, and they have a history, and some of it's dark. And you get senses of that, but also they love each other. And so you're asking questions about everything from Alzheimer's and dementia to the nature of memory to how much your memory and your past and your history play into your love for one another, and how much your love can overcome that sort of thing. And where is love really rooted? And all of that while they're on this sort of quest, and they're like, they're remembering and they're running into people, and things are happening. There is an old Arthurian knight. I won't tell you which one, but they're going to find him. They're going to run into him at a certain point, and a round table night. And so in Arthur's world, Arthur is dead, but you're just a generation removed from Camelot. So because he understands what Arthur is and what Arthur represents, the collective past, the collective history of what makes Britain Britain, what we tell ourselves versus the truth. These are the types of questions that he's asking, and he's got it going both on the individual level with this couple, And then he's got it going with like all of Britain's history. What's truth? What's fiction? What are the lies we tell ourselves? What are the ways we glorify the ugly in our past and turn it into a beautiful myth or story that we can rally around? How to, all that sort of thing. And so it was just nice to be like, hey, here's a guy who's one of the ultimate craftsmen of our time. He, like in all of his books, he's got a question or he's got something interesting or perspective or something to say. And he's just going to stay on theme, on point. He's going to be evocative. He's going to explore the genre a little bit. He's going to use it, but he has something to say or something worth asking. And he's artful in how he approaches it all. And he's going to play with Arthur of all things. And that's an interesting sandbox to play in. And so I just really loved reading it. I really enjoyed it, had a lot of fun with it. I did not like his answers or where he landed necessarily, but the journey was a good and interesting one, and one that is really sort of, that's what you want from good art, is to be challenged, to see the world differently, to see something differently, to ask a question or something like that, and to be entertained along the way. And so it was one of the more satisfying reads that I've had in a long time. And from there, I read Cities of the Plain to complete the Border trilogy. And it was a fine thing, is Cormac McCarthy, so elevated prose, and then not as much beauty as in some other places, but also, and not as much depravity or perversity either, but still dark, nihilistic, existential, and narcissistic, as most of his stuff ultimately is. And then I needed a palate cleanser, so I had this little copy of The Body by Stephen King, which is probably not a good palate cleanser, but
that's the story that the Rob Reiner movie's based on.
That's right.
Everybody's favorite movie that I don't like.
Stand By Me.
Stand By Me, yeah.
I haven't seen it since I was a kid. But yeah, it was there, and it was short, and it was pulpy, or promises that, so just a change of pace. So that's what I've been reading, and I don't have a lot to say about Cormac McCarthy because everything I've had to say about him has been said.
The Ishiguro sounds super exciting. Love to engage with that sometime. Engage with that text. The Murakami, his prose defeats me. Maybe it's something gets lost in translation since we're reading translations, but I hate Murakami's ear for dialogue. I hate his prose, and I can't make it through a single one of his things. I've tried several.
Yeah, I wondered about the translation. There were some things that were nice, but man, it's like this particular one, and I've heard many different people and read many different people say with Murakami, it depends on where you start. You're either going to love him or you're going to hate him. And if you get started with the wrong, they're all very different. If you get started with the wrong one, then that will be the end of it. And if you get the right one, you'll be hooked and you'll love everything he does or whatever. Like that sort of thing is what people say. What was weird is like, there are parts of the book or the story that were interesting and compelling to me. The writing was often very bad. The dialogue was horrible, just bad. It's just bad, right? It's just bad writing, and I don't.
I mean, sometimes
the only excuse you can make for it is translation. It's just inexcusably bad.
But I mean, there is something wooden about the Pavere translation that we love of Tolstoy, just simply because it is a translation, and Tolstoy had a particular voice, and when you put that into English and you capture it as well as they apparently do, there is just something like, well, that's not exactly how I would talk. That's not how you would write it if you were sitting down to just write it fresh in English, and yet.
It worked for the material.
Yeah, it works for the material, and you can tell who Tolstoy is, and it's great.
You feel like you're in a different time.
Right.
People thought differently than you do, and that's why they talk this way.
Yeah, but when you read Murakami, it's like nobody thinks this way, nobody talks this way.
Well, I think the
At
people
all,
that
ever.
say where you start is important are dumb, and I'm smart. And if I started anywhere, I wouldn't like Murakami because I've tried a bunch, or not a bunch. I mean, that's exaggerating, but I'm pretty sure I just don't like Murakami.
Yeah, I mean, this particular one, Wild Sheep Chase, it's like a really bad attempt at. And there are parts of it that feel sort of noir, right? Or they feel sort of like anime noir. It's just like there are parts of it that feel like he's trying to do Raymond Chandler, or that you can imagine if like somebody tried to novelize a Cowboy Bebop episode or something. Like, and it's got some, weird, fun things in it. But man,
everything you just named has no substance and exists entirely on having great style. I mean, that's Chandler.
That's right.
That's Cowboy Bebop. That's like all the sources
and yet
that you
Murakami has no style at all.
Right.
None, zero. And so then it's just like, okay, is the story going to be propulsive enough? And it's like, well, okay, there's a mystery and some things are unraveling. And I guess it was propulsive enough for me that I didn't quit, but I also didn't really enjoy it. And I got done with it and was like, well, I'm glad that's over with. And then I turned and picked up Ishiguro, and then I was mad at how much time I wasted on Murakami, because it's like, man, I forgot that there were good writers out there for a minute. Why on earth did I waste so much time on this Murakami novel? So I could say that I tried it when there are Ishiguro novels I've not read. And so, and honestly, I'm not the world's biggest Ishiguro fan. Remains of the Day is fine. What's the other one? Never Let Me Go is fine. Undeniably great and well done. Not exactly my cup of tea in terms of what I'm looking for in a novel. But man, I don't know, Buried Giant just really hit for me. And maybe some of it was context coming out of Murakami. You just like, hey, here's an idea. Somebody who actually has a thought, has an idea that's compelling, can create a world that's compelling. And it's just a master stylist altogether. Are you kidding me? It's like, I don't have to like Scorsese to know that Scorsese can make a great movie. And I don't have to like it and come and watch a Scorsese film and be like, wow, that was a great movie. And man, I've watched a lot of Marvel in my life, and doesn't that suck? Or whatever. I don't have to like, I don't have to like, what's his face? 2001.
Kubrick.
I don't have to like Kubrick to know that
He's good.
he's really good. He's really good. And there's so much to appreciate about a true artist. Anyhow, yeah, Murakami was a waste of life.
Yep.
Well, I've been listening to Remains of the Day, my first Ishiguro. I don't have a lot to say about it. It's painful. I mean, it's really good, but it's pretty painful.
I don't know a lot to say that I didn't say on the Bookening a long time ago.
I don't think I did listen to that Bookening, but it's been a long time.
My principal thing that I want to say is that the Anthony Hopkins movie doesn't begin to even understand the book well enough to capture it. It does not understand the principal character, and it's stupid. I mean, it's fine. The movie is its own nice little story of lost love, but it's not
nothing to do with the book.
Nothing to do with the.
I was trying to imagine it because I haven't seen the movie either. As I've been listening, I was like, could a movie?
I mean, the thing
would a
is, the
movie
guy's
get
like
this?
the guy's basically a buffoon. He's an idiot, and and Hopkins doesn't, for all his graces as an actor, of which he's always been one of my favorites. He doesn't play buffoons. Hannibal Lecter is not a buffoon, and whatever else he may
It's
be.
impossible for him to not suggest some degree of
dignity.
The dignity and reserved
brilliance
intelligence.
and
And this is a guy that's like
yes.
jumping out windows to avoid talking to people and stuff like that. Like he's silly in a very tragic way. But you almost need it's more like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode or The Office or something like that. It's like that kind of, it's like cringe comedy almost.
That's right.
Anthony Hopkins is not one of our great cringe comedians. Anyway, Ben, what else have you been reading or watching that you wish to highlight to show people the virtue of this new system?
Well, I actually did go through 2 or 3 Diana Wynne Jones books coming out of our kids fantasy thing that we did last summer.
Yeah.
End of last summer. Anyway, last fall. So,
last summer and fall, yeah.
Yep. And she can be great. Really, really fun. Really, really fun stuff. I mean, we're not talking about an Ishiguro level master or something, but we are talking about a master kid storyteller and someone who does care about people and does give you a little bit, not like a full literature meal or something, but does give you like, hey, that book made me think about people and whether or not I care about people.
It's not a full meal. It's more than like a truffle. It's, it's a...
For sure.
It's a...
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are all kinds of things like that, and it's not. They shouldn't be denigrated. It's like, would you say that yesterday that you read "The Moon Is Always Full" or whatever?
Yeah.
It's like,
kids book.
Look, it's the artistry of a simple kids book. If it can move you, if it can hit a theme, if it can touch something that's true, and help you see that or feel that in a fresh new way.
Yeah. It's like it's a full lunch. It's just not a dinner.
That's
fine.
right.
Not everything has to be dinner.
Yeah, this one was the pinho egg, which was super fun.
The pinho, like H-O?
Pinho is a name, a family name in the book. Pinhoe, the pinho egg. And it's a crazy book with just overstuffed with plot in a really, really fun way. Like you're like, what is going on? But you always feel that she's behind the scenes. She knows what's going on. One virtue that Diana Wynne Jones has, which you may or may not like, is that as a rule, when you read her, but no, this isn't true of every book, but a lot of her books, it's like, you just feel like you're just hanging out with your characters the whole time. You're like, it's like we're just hanging out. But then when you get to the end, you're like, oh, there was a lot of plot going on. I thought we were just hanging out. But the whole time, there was a plot. Like a lot of it. And it resolved in a crazy way. That was cool.
I think what you're describing is one of her principal attractions and one of the things that is most skillful about what she's doing, because she is as much of a plot person as name whoever, Agatha Christie. I don't know.
Sure.
Someone who's just pure plot. She is like you imagine her with a whiteboard, like plotting it all out and making it all work.
Yep.
She is that is one of the pleasures of her books. But then you don't feel like I hate plot.
She creates worlds too.
I hate plot. I don't ever want to feel like I'm reading plot. That's what I hate about that idiot Agatha Christie that stupid people read. Take no prisoners. New iteration of the podcast. Now I can really say what I think. Finally, at long last. Agatha Christie, more like Gagatha Measty, like gag me with a spoon. That's what I'd rather happen than read Agatha Christie. True story, Jake had to go to the bathroom, so there was a pause. So that was me attempting to pick up
right where we left off.
Mid-rant. Listen, folks, you may think Agatha Christie's smart, but that's because you're dumb. That's because you're dumb. No, she's great. She's great.
Wow.
People that read her are good. Good people. Good people. There's good people on both sides. There's heroes on both sides. As the great George Lucas, another great writer, right up there with Agatha Christie, wrote. Equally good prose stylist and dialogue writer. Ben, what were we talking about? Diana Wynne Jones.
So what books did you read? All right. So let me ask this question.
Yeah.
I think most of our listeners, if they've tracked this sort of thing, if they know Diana Wynne Jones, they know the Howl trilogy,
Howl's Moving
right?
Castle, yep.
Yep.
So they know Howl's Moving Castle, and maybe beyond that, they know House of Many Ways and Castle in the Air, right?
You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, so outside of those three, where do you go for more Diana Wynne Jones?
Where you go is, you can go a couple of ways. One, you could go to Hexwood, which Nathan and I talked about. I think that's good for older kids.
Yep. Be ready for an extra complicated plot.
And man, what an awesome book. Just one of my favorite kids' books ever. Or you could go to the Crestomancy series, and that's Pinho Egg is like the last book, I think, in the Crestomancy series. And that one starts with Charmed Life. And it's fun.
The way I've heard that one, people like to say, that's her Harry Potter.
Well, that's because Harry Potter is like a ripoff of Charmed Life. I mean, there are various elements of Harry Potter.
A ripoff of all kinds of things.
I know, but there's just a bunch of stuff that ticks boxes from Charmed Life. And it was written way earlier. So Crestomancy is like Diana Wynne Jones doesn't write straight sequels as a rule. What she does is she's like, I created a world, and that was a self-contained
Let's explore
story.
a different corner of it.
Yeah, and maybe your old friends will show up.
That's not what Hal and Sophie books are, right? Like they're not all like
right.
Exactly. Like Hal and Sophie recur, but not in the same way and not in the same importance either in the plot. Or maybe they're important, but they're hidden. Or, she likes people in disguise in her books. So Crestomancy's like, there's a nine-lived enchanter who keeps all the parallel universes in balance and makes sure that magic isn't misused, and he's a government employee. And we're going to have stories where he shows up, and sometimes he'll be the focus, but sometimes he'll just kind of show up and like help solve things. So that gives her a lot of latitude to write stories about Crestomancy, which is the name of the nine-lived enchanter.
Gives me a lot of attitude of admiration for her great work.
Yeah, I hope so.
So Hexwood or
great.
just the Crestomancy series?
Hexwood, Crestomancy. I mean, she wrote a lot of books.
Dog's Body is one that you got me for Christmas or something, and I have to admit I still haven't read it, but I'd like to.
Dog's Body is like great until you get close to the end. And she goes all like metaphorical existentialist on you.
You got
through mythology.
You got that book for Peter, and I think he would still say it's his favorite book. I think he's probably read it 3 or 4 times.
Well, when I was Peter's age, I would have said the same thing. Reading it now, I'm like, no, didn't quite make that work, Miss Jones. I wish you hadn't tried to do that.
Wow. The question is, were you cooler now or when you're 16? Because those are 2 cool dudes that we're thinking about.
I think the answer's obvious to everyone.
Yes, I think it is.
Oh, man. Diana Wynne Jones. Yeah. She's great. She's really cool. And then I, for some reason, decided that I needed to listen to something that was not Diana Wynne Jones and had no relation, which is the Pensées of Blaise Pascal.
Does that have his wager and everything? Is that?
Yeah, and I kind of love it. It's like, why didn't I read this guy before? It's because whatever else you may think, and I mean, I didn't realize the extent to which you're just like, he's like 297, and then it's like 3 words and it trails off, and you're like, what? And then he's like 298, and 298 is like an essay. And then 299 is like a few words. Stuff like that. So it really is just his collected thoughts, but some of it is so great. He has this really memorable passage on the guy who's like, I don't want to think about God or the eternity of the soul. Yeah, I'm going to die. And I don't understand who I am or what I'm here for or what life means. And whatever I gain, I'm going to lose at death. And that could happen now or in a few minutes. But that doesn't matter. I'm not going to even bother thinking about that or investigating it. Pascal goes on for a while, and it's like, who would want this guy for a friend? Like, what is up with this guy? It's really fun, but it's also sweet because he's trying to convince that guy to stop being a fool and look into things. So it's fun. I mean, not all of his thoughts are awesome, but a lot of them are pretty awesome, or at least they make you think, and man, is he a good writer? Is he fun? Is he epigrammatic? It's just likable. It's like, why? I don't know. Wish I'd read some of this before. He's Roman Catholic, but he's the very evangelical and warm kind of Roman Catholic. And he's like, man, I want people to get saved. They should know Jesus. They're going to die. Like, that's why I'm writing this book. They should read what I'm writing instead of wasting their time on frivolities. He actually says that at one point. If it doesn't do them any good, at least it won't do them any harm. He's just, you can't not like him. And anyway, so I recommend it. You're not going to agree with everything he says. Sometimes he goes pretty Catholic on you. But boy, what a fun guy to discover. What a fun stylist and thinker and rhetorician, but someone who's sweet at the same time and who's feels like he's quasi preaching sometimes in a good sense. So that's been fun. I'm not listening through that very fast, but I can listen to a pretty good chunk at a time, and it'll keep my attention.
Cool. I've always wanted to read Pascal because I've always had a sense that's how he would be, but I never have.
I've played around, but never actually devoted any
Yeah. This whatever British guy I'm listening to does an awesome job reading him. And I don't think I've been listening to it sped up, and that also slows me down. But that's just because it's just a little too much to digest.
Yeah.
Sped up. So, and same with Ishiguro, and actually same with Jones. I've just decided for certain things that I want to enjoy, like if I'm going to enjoy fiction, if I'm going to listen to Remains of the Day, I listen to some great British actor read it. I don't really want it sped up.
Why not?
I'm just
slow it down to like 0.5 and then you can enjoy it for double the time.
I don't want to torture myself either. Oh, man. Living in Steven's head. Yeah. So that's the stuff I've been reading, listening to.
Cool.
It's been good.
Well, I'm going to be gauche and be a watcher rather than a listener.
Cool.
I got some watching stuff too.
For this episode, at least, because I want to warn people not to see this movie that might be attracted to this movie, which is
right.
The Iron Claw. I think we talked about this off mic at some point, but I don't think we ever recorded anything on it because this was during the great period of not recording things. So I saw The Iron Claw, which I imagine some of our listeners might have seen it or might be attracted to see it because it's a biopic.
It was of interest to me.
Yeah, it's a sports picture. I think a lot of people in our circle really love the wrestling movie. What's it called?
Warrior.
The Warrior.
Yep.
And they want to find another warrior. I mean, I think that's not immaterial to this discussion. And it's like a bad dad movie, and who doesn't have a bad dad or relate to that one way or another, And it was getting some buzz last year. I forget whether it actually won any Oscars. I don't think it did, but it was an Oscar playa. And it's the kind of thing you might be tempted to watch. And I just want to tell you, it is terrible, dear listener. It is witless and stupid and bad. And here's the thing, not as interesting as the real story. Like the whole thing is there's this, so if people don't know, there's like this dynasty of professional wrestlers. I forget what the family's name is, but there was the dad. He never quite made it to the top. Here, I'll just read you the description on the website here. The true story of the inseparable Van Eyck brothers who made history in the intensely competitive world of professional wrestling in the early 1980s. Through tragedy and triumph under the shadow of their domineering father and coach, the brothers seek larger-than-life immortality on the biggest stage in sports. So you already kind of understand the broad outline of the story going into it. If you've ever seen a movie before or understand life, you're like, okay, I know what this is going to be. The dad didn't quite make it, and he wants the brothers to capture the glory that he never quite had, and so he pushes them really hard. And then it is this incredible true story of tragedy with multiple of the brothers committing suicide, with a horrible injury befalling one of them, with an accidental death befalling one of them. They actually cut another brother out of the movie who in real life killed himself just because they were like, we can't subject audiences. Like they won't believe us if we say how horrible the life of the Van Eyck family actually was. They won't buy it. And so they just cut him out. What I just described, I think, could be the makings of a wonderful movie or a terrible movie. I mean, Warrior, to take the example of the hour, is a wonderful movie that has a very cliched sort of, and kind of, what do you call it? I don't want to say not realistic, but it works maybe better as symbol or metaphor. It's pulpy. Yeah. It's a fairy tale. Like these two brothers, really, they're going to be on a, it's like you have to buy into a couple things for the story to even work that you're just like, that wouldn't happen. But it's great. And I don't care. And that's not even a criticism. That's just a description. So Iron Claw is a much more realistic movie in that it's basically dealing with things that really happened. But here's the thing that makes it stupid. The dad is just portrayed as bad. And I don't even mind, like, I understand the world is full of two-dimensional monsters. I understand that they exist. And I understand the world is full of domineering, brutal fathers. So I'm not opposed. It's not like my sense of, God's fatherhood or reclaiming fatherhood as a Christian makes me, we can't tell a story about bad dads. We've got to tell stories about bad dads because they're all over the place. Like that's going to be one of the primary things that our art deals with. And it can't not be, because that is the real pandemic of our times, is fatherlessness and bad fathers. We must talk about that. And it's going to be all over our art. And basically it always has been all over our art because from Adam on, we've had bad dads, right? So I don't mind the fact that this dad is a villain. But what the movie does not do is ask really basic questions like, how did he inspire his kids? Why do they love him? What was good about this guy? Like what felt good about this guy?
Mm-hmm.
You as a viewer are never invited into the circle. You're always invited to just sort of stand in judgment on it. And that's a really good way to make liberal people who are predisposed to hate this guy pat themselves on the back and feel good. But it's not a good way to actually gain any insight into this story. I mean, the fact is, these men have a gravitational pull to them.
Potency.
They have potency. Yeah. They have, there's a reason. And oftentimes with a guy like this, when you do hear these crazy stories of people who had these warped, destructive childhoods, even people that suffered sexual abuse, you'll hear it was so much fun. I loved it. I thought I was having the adventure of my life. And I'm not saying that has to exactly be this. I don't know that it was the experience of the Van Eyck brothers, but there must have been something about this man, some potency, and the movie is so uninterested in that. It is so uninterested in, it's actually the exact same problem that I had with Killers of the Flower Moon, which I think I did get a chance to talk about on this podcast, where it's just like, they were bad and they mistreated the Indians. I don't doubt that they were bad and they mistreated the Indians. But what makes a person bad that way? Why were they able to dehumanize these people this way? Why? What? You don't have to tell me they were good. You can hate the white man all you want. I don't care. Just tell me why. Investigate it. Ask some questions. Interrogate the material. Interrogate the personalities. I want insight. I have a complicated relationship with my father. I watch a movie like this. I want to learn or grow or be moved because I recognize something.
Well, inevitably what happens if you don't interrogate it is people just react, and they'll react the opposite way. It's like, okay, you didn't ask the question, so I don't actually believe your story.
Right.
I don't believe that the white people were the bad guys in this situation because you're trying so hard to prove that they are.
Right.
And you're unwilling to ask anything about how they got away with it, what made them the way they are, or anything. You're so unwilling and uninterested to ask that question. You're so focused on forcing this down my throat that now it just rings like propaganda to me.
Yeah.
And so I question the whole narrative.
Well, that's how this felt.
And that's how people respond to things like that.
That's exactly how this felt to me. And I don't doubt that the broad strokes of the story were true. But I mean, the other thing that, apart from it being a morally good idea to actually investigate these things, it's also just more interesting for drama to ask, what was warped about the sons? What was actually broken about them? What made them want to follow this man? What made them be like him? And if the only thing is they had the disease of machismo and patriarchy, but other than that, they were just sad little victims with no real moral agency. And nobody really seems to have any moral agency except for the bad dad over here. And all the women are great. The mom, who must have been complicit in three of her sons committing suicide, one son destroying his body, another, she's a saint who just puts up with this man. And then she finally has this cathartic scene where she doesn't cook him dinner at the end, literally the second to last scene of the movie. He comes home, he says, "What's for dinner?" And she says "I don't know. I wasn't hungry." And you're supposed to be "Yes! Yeah, you go, girl." And it's just shut up, movie. That's not a triumph. I mean, there might be a way for this woman in this situation to stand up to this man in a way that would be an actual triumph. Again, I'm not opposed to that in storytelling, but that was cheap. Ooh, her third son just shot himself, and she didn't cook him dinner. Yeah, score one against the patriarchy. Come on. There are some scenes that might make you cry if you had a complicated relationship with your father, or if you have some baggage. You might feel yourself being moved
But if you're anything like me, you'll resent it because you won't think that they're playing fair. I mean, it's a little bit like Wonder Woman 1984 had one scene where Pedro Pascal's bad dad character reconciled with his daughter or something. And I cried because it's not hard to make me cry about dad stuff. But you got to, it's annoying. It's awful when it's not done fair, when they don't play fair. And so I hate this movie. I despise and abominate it. They cast an actress I really like to play like the tough, sexy girl. What's her name? It's she played Cinderella.
Lily.
Lily
James.
Yeah, Lily James, who's great, but she's one of those people who, really pops and has a lot of like bright, buoyant female energy. And so they always like slaughter into these stupid roles where it's like, I'm the girl and I'm here to be like cool and not really play a real character or a woman that could ever exist. And so I just like, I hated it. And I think if you like it, you're a sucker. And that is an actual moral judgment, because I just I think people might fall for this. Not any of our listeners, of course, but like it is moving. It is very well done. The cinematography is great. The acting is good. Like there's a lot on a surface level that makes this feel like a very good drama, and it might even manipulate your emotions in a way, but I do not think that it is fair, and it is just like too important of a topic to be this bad about. I think alternate casting, there's a lot of bad dad movies where you don't really write a better character than this guy, but you cast Robert Duvall or something like that. And then that just kind of tells you everything you need to know. Like you understand, of course, this is why. There are ways to maybe typecast your way into a story like this working. Even Warrior actually does a lot of that. I mean, they cast Nick Nolte as the alcoholic father, for crying out loud. And you don't have to know much about him. You can just gesture at a few things. But then he comes in and talks like this. And you're like, okay, I think I know what this guy's deal is.
I get it.
Right. I might have a chip on my shoulder too, Tom Hardy. Like it works. There's a way to tell a story like this in broad strokes and still play fair with the material. This movie is not. It's incredibly damning in what it does with suicide. We actually see a scene that I guess they justify by like it's one of the brothers imagining it, but it's basically like the last guy shoots himself, and then the next scene is like him showing up, in a beautiful field and being like, "Hey, it's my brothers," and he meets his 4-year-old, his brother that died when he was 3, and and it's one of those things that will mechanically extract a tear from you. It's like it's nice to see these people that have suffered such tragedy be reunited in some version of the afterlife. But man, you're gonna tell somebody that you're just one bullet to your head away from bliss? How damning and irresponsible and awful can you be? I hate. I mean, like if a movie makes people more inclined to commit suicide, then that's like an automatic F- in my book. I mean, it's one of the things that I hate and abominate about the Dead Poets Society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh, he really struck a blow against the patriarchy by shooting himself. Like, no, you didn't. We don't have. If you don't like the patriarchy, well, he succumbed to it. He's an idiot who shot himself, and there's a reason.
You lose.
Right. You lose.
Nobody wins.
I'm all for. Well, anyway, there's a gracious way to deal with these things, but making a movie about it is irresponsible, and I hate it. So there's other movies I could talk about, and I will talk about. Maybe we should wrap this podcast up for now, but okay. I wanted to. I know you have movies to talk about too, but yeah, why don't we be done for now? We'll be back. We've see, folks, we're bursting at the seams. We got more. So here's the takeaways from today, though. Read The Buried Giant.
Do not watch
the Iron Giant. I wanted to say The Iron Claw.
Definitely watch The Iron Giant if you haven't seen it.
Do watch The
That's
Iron
a different story.
Giant. Don't watch The Iron Claw. Do read Diana Wynne Jones. Do read Blaise Pascal. Yeah.
Yep.
That's it.
That's all.
Do support either patreon.com/Sound of Sanity, patreon.com/The Bookening, or patreon.com/Sanity at the Movies, which were all very well represented in today's episode. I must say,
it's good to be back.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, you ruined it. It's not fun anymore.
It's over.
It's over.
Take two.
All right, yeah, let's do it again.
No, the whole podcast.
Yeah,
let's
no,
take
let's
2
do it.
minutes. Yeah,
Let's do it.
Definitely, yeah.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the thing.
What are the shows?
The round table.
Which show is that? This is Sanity at the Movies, right?
Yeah, this is any of the movie's music. So,
Yeah.
all right, guys, folks, we're going. Goodbye. Thanks for supporting our work. We'll send you some buried giants if you're
Into that sort of thing.
If you're into that sort of thing. Yeah. If you're on the right level over at the Bookening, I hope we've been clear about where we're at, and I hope it doesn't make you too sad and does make you the appropriate amount of happy. Goodbye.